Welcome to Caliban Command. Today's subjects are the Gladius Task Force and Anvil Siege Force detachments. I planned out a series of videos to go through the strengths and features of each of the detachments, and I thought I'd give them a rating between 1 and 8. Each detachment will only receive a number once. What that means is there will not be 2 ranked in number 8 or something of that nature. I'm going with 1 being the worst detachment that we can field and 8 being the best detachment that we can field. The first of our detachments is the Gladius Task Force. The benefit that affects the entire army is called Tactical Doctrines. Each doctrine can be selected once per game, and you can select 1 per round. In addition, each doctrine boosts 1 stratagem, giving it additional benefits. The Devastator Doctrine gives your army the ability to shoot after advancing. This can be huge on first turn. It allows you to advance your entire army that first turn and get a lot more board presence early on. It enhances Storm of Fire, which will be covered in the next section. Tactical Doctrine allows a unit to shoot and declare a charge after falling back. I usually save this to use in a turn where I have multiple units tied up in melee at the start of the turn that I'm needing to shoot with. It allows me to maintain firepower when I have key firepower tied up and unable to shoot only. The Doctrine enhances Squad Tactics, a strong movement buffing stratagem. The Assault Doctrine allows you to advance and charge in the same round. This is a good way to close ground with units like Blade Guard Veterans and Assault Intercessors. This doctrine enhances Honor the Chapter. Enhancements are the next subject, covering Artificer Armor, which makes a character more tanky, which can be a benefit for lone operative characters. This can also be a huge benefit to important buffing characters. The improved saving throw and then the Feel No Pain can make a strategic linchpin in your army far harder to remove from the board. The Honor Vehement allows you to add 1 to the attacks and strength traits of a melee weapon on a model. Enhancements are the next subject. Artificer Armor makes a character more tanky, which can be a benefit for lone operative characters. This can also be a huge benefit to important buffing characters. The improved saving throw and then the Feel No Pain can make a strategic linchpin in your army far harder to remove. The Honor Vehement adds 1 to the attacks and strength traits of the melee weapons on a model, and during the Assault Doctrine that modifier goes up to 2. I think the Terminator captain leading a squad of Deathwing Knights would have a good deal of fun with this one. The Adept of the Codex is typically my first pick, as it allows for a bonus turn with the Tactical Doctrine. This can only go on a captain model, which is fine as it's a strong choice in our list building anyway. With the way this is worded, it seems like it could be used for 2 turns. I've looked into the FAQ release from GW and found nothing to contradict this. Fire Discipline grants sustained hits 1, which causes critical hits to generate an additional hit. During Devastator Doctrine, it also causes crits to occur on a 5 or a 6 instead of only on a 6. I personally like putting this on Chaplains or Librarians. However, I would not put it on a Terminator Librarian, as it already gains sustained hits 1 from the Librarian. This brings us to stratagems. Armor of Contempt is the same across all of the Space Marine detachments. It reduces the AP of incoming attacks during a phase by 1. This can be a game changer. You can give a unit that would otherwise not get a saving throw against an attack a saving throw. I would personally save it for important units who would otherwise have no saving throw against the attack, something holding an objective, for instance. It may only give you a 5-up to save, but with other defensive buffs, for instance a Feel No Pain, it may shift enough wounds that the unit on the... This brings us to stratagems. Armor of Contempt is the same across all the Space Marine detachments. It reduces the AP of incoming attacks during a phase by 1, and this can be a huge game changer. You can give a unit that would otherwise not get a saving throw against an attack. I would personally save it for important units such as objective holders and things of that nature, who would otherwise not get a saving throw against the attack that's incoming. It may only give you a 5-up to save, but with other defensive buffs, for instance a Feel No Pain, it may shift enough wounds to keep that unit on the table a little bit longer, which could lead to you scoring more. This can be used during your opponent's shooting or fight phases and costs a single command point. I can't recommend this one enough. If you need to hold an objective and your opponent is throwing high armor penetration at this unit, it is absolutely worth a command point to hold it longer. Only in death does duty end. After your opponent selects targets for the fight phase, you can select one of your units that is targeted for attacks. If a model is destroyed, it can fight on death after your opponent finishes the attacks towards that unit. Now, this does have to be selected before you know if your models are going to die, and I don't think that's the best setup, but it is still a strong stratagem for 2 command points. Honor the Chapter. During the fight phase, one Adeptus Astartes unit gains Lance on its melee weapons. If the Assault Doctrine is active, it also improves those weapons' armor penetration by 1. This is good on, for instance, Assault Intercessors and things of that nature. It would be a strong option, for instance, on Deathwing Knights, in my opinion, or on Blade Guard veterans, and I would consider using it very heavily in those 2 situations. Adaptive Strategy. During your command phase, you can select a second doctrine to be active for a unit. This will allow you to select a doctrine that has been used by your army previously and costs 1 command point. Now, this does only select a single unit, but I genuinely think that would make a huge difference in certain situations. For instance, if you need the Devastator Doctrine in order to get some backboard units brought up to bear, you can use the Adaptive Strategy to trigger the Devastator Doctrine for them and allow them to advance and still fire at full ballistic skill. Storm Fire. During your shooting phase, 1 unit's ranged attacks gain Ignore. Stormfire. During your shooting phase, 1 unit's ranged weapons can gain Ignore Cover, and if the Devastator Doctrine is active, they also gain a point of armor penetration. This also costs 1 command point. We have a lot of cheap stratagems here, and I think Stormfire is one of our stronger ones. You can absolutely take a las cannon and give it an extra point of AP. Not as useful as, for instance, giving an entire Hellblaster squad an extra point of AP as well as ignores cover. That can make for a very strong turn of shooting for that unit. Squad Tactics. You can activate this during your opponent's movement phase. After your opponent ends a move, advance or fall back. This can only target an infantry or mounted unit, and it cannot target a unit in engagement range. When that unit is selected, that unit can move d6 inches. If the Tactical Doctrine is active, that unit can move 6 inches instead. This one is a good one for repositioning during your opponent's turn, and it can help you kind of reshuffle and stay out of engagement range easily in terms of charge danger. Squad Tactics. You can activate this one during your opponent's movement phase. After your opponent ends a movement, advance or fall back. This can only target an infantry or mounted unit and cannot target a unit in engagement range. When that unit is selected, that unit can move d6 inches. If the Tactical Doctrine is active, that unit can move 6 inches instead. This is a good one for repositioning to avoid a charge from a unit that would be particularly bad for you to end up having to deal with in melee combat. It still costs a command point. It is a really solid choice, I think, depending on the situation. Against World Eaters, it could prevent you from getting tied up in melee, which is always a huge boon. This leads to me giving the Gladius a placement of 8 out of 8. I think it is our best choice for detachments at this time, but I really hope that the Codex fleshes us out a little bit more and gives us better options. The combination of strengths lend themselves to a very varied force, which Dark Angels are known for fielding. It doesn't lean towards any particular set of units, and I think that honestly works out very well in its benefit. The Anvil Siege Force is a detachment that I'm fond of. I've been playing with it quite a bit and trying to figure out what units work best in it. So far, Gravis Marines have been my favorite units to take, specifically the Biologus along with Aggressors. Heavy intercessors are my troop of choice for it. The detachment rule, Shield of the Imperium, gives all your ranged weapons heavy, which means any stationary units in your army go to hitting on 2s and higher on the 6-sided dice in place of a 3-up. This is a huge improvement across your entire army, and there's no penalty if you move, other than losing the point of bonus accuracy. The enhancements here are fun too. Indomitable Fury can go on a Gravis character, which once per game when it dies, you can roll for him to stand back up on a 2-up. Fleet Commander is a bit strange, but can be fun from a psychological perspective. On the first turn of activation, you place a marker on the board. The next turn, you place a second one within 12 inches of the center of that marker, then draw a straight line between the two. You roll 1d6 for each unit that line crosses. On a 3-up, that unit takes d3 mortal wounds, then both markers are removed. Keep in mind, while placing the markers, your units get hit as well. Also, the enemy has a turn to move around that first marker. This can be a strong psychological tool to prevent board advancement, but I'm not sure what mileage we'll get out of it when it's all said and done. Stoic Defender grants a 6-up feel no pain while on an objective for a squad, and halves the objective control while battle shocked instead of making it 0. Architect of War grants a unit the character is attached to ignores cover on their attacks. Of the 4 enhancements, I personally lean towards either Indomitable Fury or Stoic Defender. Armor of Contempt is here, and honestly it meshes well. Our lists will likely use a lot of Gravis for this detachment, which means high AP is a must to deal wounds to them quickly. This can help make the opponent work more for each wound and costs only a single command point. Rigid Discipline is a good movement option and can be used to extricate a valuable shooting unit from combat. It can be used at the end of the fight phase, but only if you can fall back fully into your deployment zone or into range of an objective. This costs a single command point. Not one backward step. During the command phase, one of your units can double its objective control value, but it's forced to remain stationary. The unit has to be on an objective. Essentially, you're being forced to hold that objective in exchange for doubling your ability to hold it. Also, gaining a +1 to hit on that unit courtesy of the heavy rule. This costs 1 command point. No threat too great. During your shooting phase, you can give a unit rerolls to wound against monsters and vehicles. I'd consider this one carefully. It can be useful against targets like transports and can tilt the odds enough to be considered in my opinion. But it comes at the cost of 2 command points, which is, I think, a little high for what it does. Battle Drill Recall. During your shooting phase, you can select one unit for the rest of the shooting phase. It gains sustained hits 1, and if it's stationary, it also critically hits on 5-ups. This costs 1 command point. This is a really strong option, especially given the sustained hits, proccing additional attacks, and also the fact that we have units like Stern Guard who gain bonuses when they critically hit. Hail of Vengeance. During your opponent's shooting phase, after a unit has resolved its attacks, one of your units can return fire at that unit so long as it's an eligible target. This costs 2 command points and gives you a little bit of shooting during your opponent's turn. It's not an amazing choice in my opinion, but you can get some pretty high numbers of bonus attacks during your opponent's turn that can count for something. For instance, if a squad of Hellblasters can open up, I'd do so. The Anvil Siege Force gets a 7 out of 8. I think it's our second best choice, and I personally like its focus on improving accuracy and find its abilities fun. It's not our strongest pick, but it's far from the weakest. I like the focus on Gravis units. And I think if we get something in our codex of a similar nature, it will be themed off our Deathwing and will likely mimic this with a focus on assault rather than heavy as a keyword. This wraps us up for the day as far as discussions of tactics and the detachments go. I'm covering them a couple at a time because I want to give each one the due diligence they deserve, and I want to have fun while I dig into them. I've discovered some things that I didn't know applied the way they do with the Anvil Siege Force, and I'm really looking forward to playing around with it more and building more lists with it. Tell me which detachments you're interested about seeing more about and what you'd like to see sample lists for. I'm really looking forward to digging into those as well later. We're going to talk about Hobbytown now. They are the sponsors of our channel currently, and they have a phenomenal array of painting tools. They have paints, they have models, they have everything that you could possibly need. Not to mention, their staff have always been super knowledgeable about anything that I've picked up there. They've made some recommendations for how I could improve my hobby flow. They've gone through the effort of helping me find a starting point in 40k in a faction that I love. I've played Dark Angels now for years, and that's largely thanks to them helping me figure out what faction fit me the best. The series as a whole has been a blast to work with them on. They've helped me find stuff for Age of Sigmar that I enjoy. They've ordered stuff in that I haven't had access to before. They've helped me find paint alternatives when they didn't have a Citadel paint that I needed. They've helped me find new board games to play. It has genuinely just been a really helpful crew to work with. They stock Army Painter, GW, Testers, Tamiya. They have Mission Models paints, which I got the pleasure of trying out recently and had a really great time with. They stock Gundam kits, anime kits of various types. They have the Vallejo paint line, which I use a lot when I do Gunpla to just really bring out some neat color combinations with. They have all kinds of fun in there, and I genuinely cannot recommend the store enough. I hope you guys check them out. Even if you can't find a local branch, I hope you check out their online store at hobbytown.com.